All right, I will get started. This is the Wealth and Wellness webinar. I actually started to speak about this in the most recent months in an effort to build that connection and our understanding of wealth and wellness, because I feel like oftentimes they're split separately, right? It's a dichotomy. Either we're pursuing our wealth and we're taking care of our finances and so forth, or we're really taking care of the internal, our bodies and so forth. And I've always been having these questions in my mind, especially as I got into finances and so forth. Why do I feel like the spaces that I come to in which we're focused on wellness, why do I feel like we don't get a chance to either talk about finances? We're not particularly interested in finances. We're really more so focused on ourselves, our well-being, and so forth. And so the Wealth and Wellness webinar is an effort to build that connection, see how they actually do impact one another, how they work together, and how we can intentionally build our wealth and our wellness simultaneously. And so the first thing I'll do just to say is introduce myself. My name is Jermaine. I'm from Oakland, California. Um, Honestly, grew up in the East Bay, making sure to be involved in a lot of things that were happening in the community, making an effort to not only be part of, nonprofit organizations, but also outreach efforts, organizing and so forth. And about my late 20s, I began to run into this huge question, which was how are you going to, one, make money? And then two, what are you going to do with your money when you get it? And as I began to ask my friends, inquire from the people that I knew that were in my circle, I began to recognize that a lot of us did not have answers. But I will say this, at the same time, I began to pay attention to the types of things that I was putting into my body, the types of things I was doing on my spare time, whether or not I was taking care of my health and wellness, my fitness and so forth. And I began to recognize how difficult it is for us to do so for the numerous different reasons that health and wellness is actually a struggle. All that to say is that I've been doing this type of work both internally and externally for a number of years. And it again has produced this huge question on my mind, which is how do we begin to bring discussions around wealth, around finances into the spaces in which we're talking about everything else around Gaza. We're talking about everything around what's going on with our community, the violence that we see in our communities, the lack of food and resources, and so on and so forth. And again, what I recognize is that there is this huge effort to take care of one another. And I do recognize, too, the need to have some financial literacy in order to take care of ourselves, in order to do the best with what we have while we have it, and to make sure that these resources stretch not only to cover our basic needs, but also our wants, but also our expenses in the future by virtue and by way of investing. And so I'll move forward from there and begin to discuss um, this question. Um, Rewind 2001, 2002. I'm in high school. I'm loving Dead Prez. I'm listening to everything around socialism, around the things that we're facing in this country as African Americans and so forth. And there's a song called Discipline. And in this song, it says, health is wealth. I think it's probably the first time that I recall hearing the term and the phrase, health is wealth. And I'm like, yo, why do they call one? I love the idea. I was like, yes, health is wealth, right? I'm going to take care of our body, take care of how I'm eating, what I'm drinking, where I'm going, how I'm treating myself. And that is the means by which my wealth will be built. Because honestly, who really cares about building physical wealth? One, financial wealth when you're 18. Two, when we're so focused on the ideas, I would say focused on the issues that we're facing in the communities and how we want to help one another. Wealth was very far away from my mind. And so I bring up this question, does the phrase health is wealth encourage or discourage us from building wealth? Does the phrase health is wealth encourage or discourage us from building wealth? Um, I want to throw it to somebody, but I don't know who's actually paying attention. So if somebody could raise their hand, health as well. Does it encourage or discourage you from building wealth? Yes. I think it like puts a lot of pressure around time too, and it makes me kind of scared of it. Interesting. Right, I hear that. I hear that. And so you end up being, like you said, paralyzed, but not know exactly which direction to go. Makes complete sense. Makes complete sense, especially again in some of the contexts that we hear it in which again the wealth, our wellness is the focus, right? Our health is our focus. Like, cool. Well, let me go ahead and just focus on how much I get out of investing into my body, investing into what I'm eating and what I'm drinking and how I'm using my body, and whether I'm hiking or not, whether I'm exercising or not. That is the means by which I'm going to continue to one live, but it definitely minimizes any type of effort or energy we might need to put towards actually focusing on the financial part of that equation. All that to say is that when I saw that phrase, when I went into that quote, one of the first things that hit me was that wealth actually may be evil, right? That if we focus too much time and energy on our finances, we might be like the people that have us in some very unfortunate, if you will, disenfranchised franchise situations, right? If we find ourselves being too interested in how much things cost and how we're going to pay for it and how we're going to make money and how we're going to make more and how we're going to invest it and then how we're going to put it in the market and then how much we're going to get from it and our rate of return, we might sound a little too close to, back then it was George Bush, currently it would be Donald Trump, and the other folks that we would call the oligarchs, right? The folks who are thinking so much about their companies that they're not focusing on the well-being of the people around the planet. And so all that to say is that there has been this challenge that I think that phrase built within me. And again, not until I started to run into some difficult financial situations that I go, okay, I have to somehow try to address this. This can't just remain a battle between a battle of good versus evil, but it has to, by some means, work together, and we see how we can do this while, again, caring about not only ourselves, but caring about the people around us. The link between wealth and wellness, financial health and physical health actually influence one another. Wellness is an investment, not an expense. And so I bring that up because what we recognize, especially in this day and age where we're talking a lot about mindfulness, we're talking a lot about our mental health, we're talking a lot about our emotional health, our spiritual health. We recognize that there are some practices that we want to put into play that actually have a benefit on us, not just now and in this moment, but for the future to come. So we want to make sure that we're taking care of our mental, emotional, and spiritual health at work, at home, in our different spaces, when we're with our friends, when we're with our families, when we're out and about, we have to take care of our basic needs. We recognize that it's very important that we take care of our well-being, but we also recognize that that's something that is going to help us to live longer. It's going to help us to be more content for longer. It's going to help us to be more active and be more healthy for a long period of time. So rather than it just be an expense, we can look at it like an investment. And that will, again, help us translate some of these ideas into the financial realm. The next thing says, the cost of poor health, stress, sickness, low energy, and hospital bills, right? So the more that we don't invest into our mental health, our physical health, our emotional health, the more we can expect to put into the doctor's hands, into those co-pays, into the surgeon's hands, because we have to take care of that on the back end of life, right? We have to start figuring out how much we have to put into our bodies later on because we weren't very focused on those things in our earlier years. And then the fourth thing is the benefits of strong wellness habits, longevity, productivity, better decision making, and emotional resilience. And so all of these things we recognize to be beneficial for ourselves. We recognize to have a good impact not only on ourselves but for those around us and the people that we love and care about, whether it's the babies or it's our friends or it's our church members. We recognize the more that we put into our mental and emotional well-being, the more that we can give to others and the more that we can ultimately bless them with our very presence. Similarly, that very clearly into, I don't know if this can actually play, but this is a video by John Hope Bryant in which he is talking about the power of our credit scores. And so, when we're talking about our credit scores, one thing that we think about, of course, is how much interest we end up having to pay on our vehicles when we go and purchase them, and how long we're going to have to pay interest. We think about how much it's going to cost to purchase a house, and which neighborhood we can actually live in, which gets into one of his, if you will, cornerstones of his whole message. Is in order to purchase good real estate, we have to have good credit scores. In order to have good credit scores, we have to invest that time and energy into our credit scores such that they are actually increasing because we care about them. And all that to say, hopefully I can play this again. I highly doubt it. And look how fun. All right. So again, I'm not sure if that was very audible for me, but it speaks to the difference between a high credit score neighborhood and a low credit score neighborhood. Now, coming from East Oakland, I know all about what it looks like to be in a low credit score neighborhood. Also, I live in Richmond currently. We actually live really close to the marina. It's really cute, really nice. And then we are like right by the freeway. And if anybody knows anything about geography and how it works in city planning, once we cross the freeway, we're in a whole different world, right? And whether we're talking about the 580 or the 880, the 13, okay, we already know. That's way up there. But when it comes to even my neighborhood in Richmond, once I cross the freeway, I start to see, and he speaks about this in his videos, I start to see the check cashing places. I start seeing the presence of the liquor stores. I start seeing not just the presence of the churches, but also the presence of all of the gas stations. And then you can see it even on the streets and on the asphalt and on the sidewalks, how things are less taken care of. You're going to have a higher presence of probably, people driving fast, the accidents and so on and so forth. And it speaks to how we all know that in certain areas, the crime is higher. In certain areas, it seems like it's an intentional space created such that people over in this particular space don't thrive or survive at the same level as people in other spaces. And so it began to honestly bring to my mind the question of, well, what is the credit score of the neighborhood that I'm living in? And so he has this on his website, Operation Hope, in which you can check out your neighborhood, put in your zip code, and see what is the credit score of your neighborhood. In ours, it's like 698. So it's like not 700, but it's like right by 700. All that to say is, in this neighborhood, I recognize, one, the silence. And I don't just mean, there's no helicopters, but I do mean there's no helicopters. I don't just mean that there's no gunshots in the night, but I do mean that there's no gunshots. I don't just mean that there is no fireworks in August or in June. mess around in Oakland or in April, right? We never know when the fireworks stop or start in Oakland. But in our particular neighborhood in Richmond, it is July, maybe 3rd, maybe 2nd, and it ends maybe 4th or 5th, and that's it, right? But all that to say is that there is this, again, if we paid attention to our money, paid attention to the way that we intentionally spent our money and the way that we use our credit, the way that we build our credit on purpose, we could find ourselves living in certain neighborhoods on purpose, intentionally and comfortably, because we intentionally built our wealth and worked on building our credit so that we could be in certain spaces. Wealth and wellness. So again, not just focusing on the physical part of our wealth, if you will, health as wealth, our health, but honestly thinking about how that interacts with our wellness. Investing in wellness as income grows. And so this brings up a question, which is living in high credit score neighborhoods. How can we intentionally start putting our money towards things that will help us build wealth and help us take care of ourselves, help us be in spaces that will honor our well-being and take care of ourselves? At the bottom, it says a high credit score neighborhood would likely have, again, better schools. You're going to have safer environments, lower, it says lower interest rates for residents, and higher life expectancy. So one thing he mentioned in that video is chances are you'll literally live 20 years longer if you spend your time, the majority of your time, in a high credit score neighborhood. And one of the reasons is the types of things that are happening and going on in that neighborhood. The relationship between built environments and wellness. We're talking about access to healthy grocery stores. So before I move on, I want to bring that up. When it comes to a neighborhood that you want to live in, what are some of the things that make you go, this is why I want to live here? When we think about the houses that we may see on the market, what are some of the things that make us say, this is great? No, I like the house, but look at what's around us. Can you guys throw out some ideas? What would you love to have in your neighborhood? Trees, right? Trees are good. Trees are very good. Glad you mentioned that. We actually just came from Mexico City. They have a thing called urban forest, in which are just so many trees. They literally can say it's a forest. We just have some houses in there, but it's basically majority trees. So that's a blessing to actually have trees in your neighborhood. What is something else? Right? Grocery stores, right? And the truth of the matter is that there's levels to this, right? Because there's Gazali's, right? There's Food Max, and then there's Whole Foods, and there's Trader Joe's, right? And then there's Sprouts, right? And then there's Costco, right? So we all recognize that there's levels when it comes to spill all the water. Levels when it comes to grocery stores, and we have to be very intentional about that. Now, honestly, when we're just looking for a place to live and we're just looking for somewhere to lay our heads, we may not be so concerned about something like the grocery store or which schools are in the neighborhood or what types of activities, what's the culture of the neighborhood. But I do want to bring that up because honestly, when I come down to Lake Merritt, and I see the culture, I'm like, oh, we got to live right here. We got to live right here. Don't get me wrong. I love the park. I love the fact, but I don't know if you guys ever experienced, I've been to some places where we have parks, but nobody goes to them. Right? So if the culture around the park, if the culture around the lake, the culture around the spaces that we can enter, we start to recognize I can get into this culture. I could possibly make friends. I could possibly meet my neighbors. I could possibly get connected to the people here in such a way that my health starts to be directly benefited by me living in this space. Right? And so I wanted to bring that up because sometimes the culture in a certain place is so healthy that it actually we can see ourselves benefiting not from it just because, we have a nice sunset or we have, again, a nice park with some trees. We can see ourselves connecting with others, doing something good for our health because we are in a particular location. people who are prioritizing exercise. There would also possibly be gyms, athletic clubs, community fitness centers. And so all those things are opportunities for us to improve our health because we are actually in that particular space. So a question that arises now is, how have you ever, if you have, how have you upgraded your diet? Upgraded your diet. Now, we all know that when we get some more money, we can find ways to upgrade our clothes, we can upgrade our shoes, upgrade the eyewear, the watches, the shirts. We recognize that is something very tangible and that easy that we can do. But we can also do that, and I'm sure that people have experience with improving their diets as well. So one, what is a way that you've upgraded your diet? And also, what's the next level? Where you're at right now, eating where you're eating, going where you're going to get your food. What's another level after that too? I just want to pose those questions to folks. Yes, exercise. Well, this is about upgrading your diet. So in terms of things that you try to eat more of nowadays that you didn't used to eat before, have you ever intentionally said, I'm going to lay off of these and focus more on these?
Yeah, like I worked at a barbecue restaurant growing up, and we were supposed to say brisket your way. I eat like one brisket.
Listen, brisket is so good. So it brings up the question, one, of where you were actually getting your briskets from. But then two, again, that's an intentional effort, right? To kind of focus on something like that. What would that be moving away from in your experience?
Like heavy saturated fats, like eating all the time.
I hear that. No, I hear that. And honestly, there's other variations, right, when it comes to meat. And so that's the thing too. It's one, thinking about what meats that we're eating, but then also where we're possibly intentionally getting them from, right? So again, maybe the place that you were getting it was a place that you really appreciated their quality of meat. You highly valued, their what they valued in your health. And so I'm just acknowledging, just for that second, is that just like we can, again, upgrade our clothes, we can upgrade our diets. We can intentionally eat better foods. I know at our household, we have leaned heavily on the plant-based milks, right, versus the milks that you would get from the cow milk there. We have intentionally made efforts to do more water, one, but then two, when we do soda, now we have a probiotic soda. So we're on a whole other level where we don't mean to leave everybody in the dust, but honestly, we keep thinking about ways that we can intentionally put our energy toward purchasing different things that are better for our diet. Again, may or may not taste better, because honestly, I don't love the taste of almond milk. But if I mix it with my protein drink, if I mix it, the oat milk, that's another one. If I mix it with my protein drink and the fruit and so forth, then I can enjoy it better. And actually, I'm putting some better things into my body. And of course, there are, again, plant-based proteins. There's plant-based drinks as well that we can utilize. But just acknowledging that these are efforts that we can make and we do make on a regular basis to intentionally. Let me pause that for a second. Invest in our health. One thing that has come up, and I'll get into this just now, as we start talking about better environments where we can get better food, we cannot ignore other countries. Because when I've traveled, my wife and I have traveled, and we've brought these things up, we have seen, they don't eat in Dubai like we eat in California, right? They do not eat in what else? We went to Peru. They do not do it the same. And we start to recognize, interesting, because some of this I wasn't particularly aware of. That's interesting. That's actually my computer. I don't know how that's happening. All that to say is that in other countries, there are different dietary standards. And so in this next video, this guy is going to be speaking directly to that. So I'll pause there because honestly, you've never heard of eggs having like feathers and other things on them, but it has come up. A friend of ours did go to London. They did talk about how the eggs weren't being refrigerated and how we all felt about it here in the States because we always see them refrigerated. And how, again, there are just different standards that are held not only in other countries, but I would say literally around the world that aren't always applied to the United States. Yeah, I would say possibly in the vein of our freedom, in an effort to remain free, to have freedom about what we eat and how we do business. But at the end of the day, it ends up being something that we pay for because the standards aren't very high for how we eat as well as what we are able to put into our bodies. This is a video of Hawaii. This is in Dubai. I'll put the mic here too. But we're just acknowledging that the number of ingredients in these Fruit Loops is actually pretty low. Where's all the eights? He's mentioning red dyes, blue dyes, yellow dyes, right? All of these things that we would normally see, especially in Fruit Loops, right? Especially in a food that is meant to be tasty, it's meant to be sweet, it's also meant to be colorful, it's going to decorate our milk when we put it inside, and we are going to have a good time with it, and we're going to be children when we consume this. And this is something that we did not see in Dubai. So a couple things I want to say about this particular box. I bought it knowing it probably wasn't going to taste that great. I said, son, you have to try this. Now, we take it home, we go to a local store, we bring it, we purchase it, we bring it to the Airbnb that we're staying at, we go ahead, put it in some milk, and you bet that was not very tasty at all. There was not separate flavors for the different colors. There was different colors, but there wasn't a whole lot of colors. And then two, it tasted pretty bland. And I honestly feel like one, our spoiled taste buds are probably way more offended than the people who live in Dubai because they're like, it's whatever, because this is what we're used to. But because we're used to something completely different, we were just like, we're going to have to fight to eat these Fruit Loops because this is so not what we're used to. But I was definitely grateful because I was acknowledging, oh my goodness, again, if we looked at this box and this were the United States, we would have so many more ingredients. There would be so many other things, again, that end with ein and een and viscerite, right? It would just have so many different things that we know aren't necessarily good for us, but it's actually normal here. And so when we did go to the store, we recognized that they did not have pork bacon. All the bacon was beef. Never heard of beef bacon in my life until I got there and got some beef bacon. I said, dude, I'm actually going to buy it just because I've never seen it before. So I'm going to purchase it. And of course, it did not taste like pork bacon. But at the end of the day, I was glad that we had beef bacon because that was helpful. The second thing, there was a lack of chemical ingredients, right? So that's the eens and the ites and the eins. And then the third thing is we're sacrificing our health for taste. At the end of the day, it sounds like that is the priority. It goes, if the people like it, let's make a way for people to be able to purchase it in the United States because they want it. And that's what's most important, especially for the companies who want to sell it, because that's what's most important. We want to give people the opportunity to profit. We want to have the people have the opportunity to get what they want and have that freedom and have that experience while they're here. But at the end of the day, we know that if we continue to put these things into our bodies, that we're not actually benefiting ourselves, we're actually contributing to our lack of health here. And so I do want to ask, just if anybody has any experience or have heard a story about food in other countries, healthcare in other countries. We're going to get to healthcare in just a second, about how much better it is outside the United States. Food or healthcare. All that to say, because we're going to get into that in just a bit, is that We all know when it comes to halal that they have a different process by which they cook the meat, and determining again which meats they're actually going to give to people, which meats they're actually going to consume themselves. But that is also in other countries as well. So one thing that I noticed is that when it comes to better food options. Europe has their own set of rules and laws and regulations. But again, for religious reasons, certain places in the Middle East will have a number of different rules and laws and regulations around their food. And the truth is, I don't know a whole lot about what the rules, laws, and regulations are in Africa, but I imagine that that would be similar too. And as many countries as there are, two, as many different practices as there are, I'm sure that people have different means by which they take care of the food that they make and how they produce it. And then the last part of here is better healthcare. So I know in my experience and our conversations that I've had with friends and family is that Costa Rica comes up as one of the places where we want to think about retiring, right? Because of the healthcare, one, the cost of healthcare, but also the level of healthcare, but also the environment, right? How healthy it is to be there, how clear the air is, how natural it is over there. The culture also, that's not actually even mentioned, but the culture of people. If you're around a people that are constantly thinking about how they can, one, take care of themselves and take care of other people, then you're not going to feel alone in certain spaces because these cultures are very communal and very connected to one another versus being very individualistic. Portugal comes up as having great healthcare. Japan comes up, Mexico comes up, again and again. I'm sure that there are some other places that you guys have all heard of where healthcare is actually better in those places. And so we have to not only think about the ways by which we can have the best experience here in the States by having and living in a great neighborhood, but also how we could consider living in other places abroad because of how much more they care about our health and wellness in return, right? This is their culture. This is just how they do there. When it comes to blue zones, has anyone saw that documentary, right, on Netflix? I lost my mind as soon as I saw it. I lost it when I saw blue zones. One, I had never thought about that very concept that there being places around the world where people are living more to their hundreds in this particular location than in other places. And so when they threw that idea out there and they began to show examples of different cultures where people are living to very old ages and they're not having a whole bunch of canes, a whole bunch of wheelchairs, a whole bunch of assistance being provided because they're living so long, but they're actually moving around in their late 90s. They're moving around and living, again, up to 100 and more. I was so stunned, and I was like, this is a great thing that we can definitely benefit from here in the States. And they did have some examples in the States. Now, one thing I did notice, and I want to point it out, is that while this one says Japan, Costa Rica, Italy, Greece, California, there was no place where there were centurions, which they would call them, in Africa. And I'm like, okay, they just didn't go that far. Because there is no way that there is no place in Africa where that a group of people there are not living to 100. But I'm just acknowledging that there are those places where they do live longer collectively. And it's not just, again, one adult, it's not just one family. It's like that happens very commonly in these different places. And there are some different, if you will, qualities that these places exhibit, and they wrote those down into a few different things. I wrote them down. One is having strong community ties. Another was having a healthy diet. Another was having meaningful work, and we also have daily movement, and there is lower stress, and then there is family closeness. And this is all really interesting because, again, it's not just getting at what resources are available and what people are eating and drinking, but it's getting at the whole of the person and how in certain places they are much more connected to their family, regardless of the development that has happened. Sometimes the development has helped, and sometimes the development has hurt, right? How connected people are to their families. But in these particular places, they say that family closeness is what contributes to their long living. And I was super glad about that because we recognize, again, how we can be so disconnected from our families. We can be so individualistic that we intentionally move away from our families. And we do things that are very comfortable for us personally, but it may negatively impact the community that we're from. And how in these different spaces they were saying they are super connected. And in certain spaces, especially in the developed world, they mention how there are laws that have been pushed to help people stay close to their family in places like Japan. I want to say they mentioned China as well, but definitely in Japan, in which they said people were being incentivized to stay close to family into old age so that they would actually, again, have credits for, on their taxes, credits for moving to certain places because their family is there, so that they can help take care of their family members and so forth. And so that was something that was really great to witness. But also daily movement. And when we think about daily movement, sometimes we may, in the extreme, may think about doing deadlifts, bench presses, burpees, and or squats. But a lot of the people who were doing this daily movements were people who were gardening. They were talking about how much effort, one, and work it was to take care of a garden, but then two, how good it was for their bodies because of all the bending, all the getting down and getting back up, all the work involved in it, and how that was something that was really good for the elders in these different communities. Again, something that we don't get to see a whole lot. One, we live in a house where there's an HOA, it's a community. We cannot garden. We don't have a backyard. It's a whole thing, right? Like it's really difficult to actually have a space where you have backyard space, where there is gardening space in the backyard, because that's not everywhere. But all that to say that is something that we would possibly want to reconsider, especially as we continue to get older, to go, hey, how can we intentionally make sure that we're moving our bodies, especially into old age, so that we're actually taking care of our bodies on purpose. And again, being able to live longer intentionally. This brings up the question of, kind of brings up the question about LeBron James, right? Because I'm like, how do we go from gardening to NBA Hall of Famer? But all that to say is that he is someone that intentionally puts a lot of money into his body. And we recognize that he should have definitely quit a number of years ago if he were just your average run-of-the-mill great basketball player. But because he's putting so much money into his body on a regular basis, he has a very intense regimen that he actually, again, is living to be one of the longest playing basketball players, again, having started early, first of all, but then secondly, still playing at an older age where a lot of people are having sustained some difficult injuries that force them to quit, or they are honestly just not good enough anymore, and they're being traded a bunch because, who needs you? You're a good coach, you know a lot about the game, so we'll keep you around, but he is actually still making points, right? He's still doing well. Granted, he did miss a lot of games so far, but at the end of the day, he's doing much better than a lot of people his age. But all that to say is this is someone that intentionally, again, has trainers, has chefs, right, or have people preparing the food for him that he eats, recovery tools. I've seen him doing some of the plunge stuff when it comes to, I forget what it's actually called, but where they're into this big space and they're like freezing for a little bit, but really putting these things to use on purpose such that he can actually continue to recover better than people who would probably, again, just do something like ice or do some kind of like, if you will, run-of-the-mill types of recoveries. Again, investing into having better sleep, as well as making sure that he is surrounded by people that can support him in reaching his physical goals. But all that to say is that there are examples of people that are around us that do intentionally engage in a number of practices that help them. And that is something that we can consider, again, as our finances increases, as we advance in our careers, or as we continue to save and invest our money, we can think about how can I make sure to intentionally put money towards my own longevity. Why financial awareness is a financial, why financial awareness is a wellness practice. And this is actually, again, one of the biggest motivations for me and reasons why I started getting into finances, because somebody somewhere said that one of the biggest reasons people get divorced is finance. I said, well, if I care about marriage, I better figure out something about budgeting and or spending my money wisely, because I don't want to hear this information and just go, well, I guess we weren't meant to be, and go, hey, we got to figure something out before all this starts, so that I make sure that when we start encountering difficult financial times, we can somehow maneuver them, because it's something that I valued before, again, I even got married. But regular money conversations reduce stress, right? When we start to see all of the boxes show up at the door. Amen. All of the boxes from Amazon and or other places. And we start to recognize, we can be arguing about this, but if we have an understanding of how to handle our finances, we can handle these types of things better. Tracking money equals tracking possibilities. So it's not just a matter of thinking about what we have to do with our money because we got it, but also what we can do with our money when we budget it. And that's something that I think a lot of us struggle with when it comes to budgeting. We think about, oh my goodness, when we start budgeting, I start thinking about what I can't do. But the reality is, once you have amassed money because you budgeted, once you have saved money because you budgeted, you can start thinking about other things that you can do, right? Places that you can live, places you can go to for vacation, things you can do as a result for retirement, and when you want to retire versus when you have to, because again, our physical state, or again, how much we actually have been putting towards the end of our careers. Increased income requires increased intentionality, right? And so there is some type of space that we need to start developing and don't giving of our time to go, hey, we have more money now. Let's think about these things. Should we talk about connecting with a financial advisor, right? Should we talk about connecting with a financial planner? Should we start to invest more energy into seeing some of these things that people are doing with their money? Some things I'm starting to find on Facebook. They listen to our conversations, and so now they're starting to send me things like investment opportunities. Have you thought about this franchise? Have you thought about investing into this stock? Have you thought about this company? Have you thought about buying property in this country for this much? You get this ROI and all these types of things. And these are types of things that we can start to entertain once we start to recognize, man, we don't just have money just to spend it, right? We don't have money just to buy things that we want on a daily basis. We have this money. Let's start thinking about what we can do. Again, if we leave it there, if we park it somewhere, where can it grow? How can it grow? And how can we utilize it to the best of our ability, not just for ourselves, right? But also for our children and for the people around us, and again, even possibly our community. But all that to say is that this is time and energy that we can devote to these things. If we manage to do that, we can start seeing, again, some level of a rate of return on our investment. Okay, another question for folks is, how or when have you intentionally made room in your budget for something new? Something new, and that could be a new expense that honestly you don't want to incur. Like going from paying a rent money into mortgage money. That's intentionally spending a little bit more, but you're intentionally doing that. But when is a time that has come up where you made room in your budget for something new on purpose? Yes.
I feel like I did that maybe like a year and a half ago. When I started setting up my retirement plan.
Right.
Something that I hadn't done or really passionate about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that's all I needed
Mm-hmm.
until I realized I actually needed to say it.
Right. And so you start to dedicate just a portion, right, of what you're making on a regular basis to retirement. And that's great because, one, it takes some discipline and some effort, but we definitely recognize that when we do that, that is something that we can do at this point. And then again, later on, it'll be a little bit easier. Later on, it'll be a little bit easier. You have higher income, you can put more to the side. on purpose. And so that's something that, one, is possible, but two, we definitely see the benefit when we do that for a great reason or a really good reason. Anyone else made room in your budget for something new? Right, right, but
Like if my catalytic converter ran away, does that count? It's like after the fact. You know, you're like,
It
oh,
does.
that's all pause my gym membership.
Right.
Does that count?
right. It does only because, again, you're responding and saying, okay, I got to take care of this, so I'll make the sacrifices necessary such that my catalytic converter stays my catalytic converter.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So again, these are things that adjustments that we can make. And honestly, I know that a lot of times when it comes to budgeting, again, we don't want to make these adjustments all the time, but it is something that we can do. And again, if we can exercise that muscle, we can use that muscle, we can possibly use it in other occasions on purpose and again, intentionally in a way that benefits us in more ways than just one. Budgeting to support growth. So one thing that I mentioned as a kid, whether it's $20 a paycheck or it's $30 a paycheck, you can possibly create a line item in your budget where you say, I want to put this towards wellness, and whether it's a massage, whether it's putting towards a gym membership or equipment or a tire, whatever it is, this can be something that you're intentionally putting towards your wellness, right? Any type of practice that you feel serves you, especially if it serves, your body and your longevity. But budgeting for investing, right? So like they mentioned before, we can take some money and go, I'm going to intentionally do this, whether it's a small amount for now or it's small relative to our budget. We can intentionally put that towards investing. And then the third thing is budgeting it as a permission slip instead of a restriction. Again, this is giving ourselves permission to go, I'm going to take this $20, I'm going to take this 50, take this 200, and intentionally put it towards the thing that I want to grow in my life, such that in the years to come, I start to see, again, the benefit of having put this money in this area. But if, again, we're just thinking about what we're not spending it on and how we could have went to the movies again, or what we could have purchased, like that dress or those shoes, again, or going to that place a little bit sooner, that fast food restaurant or really nice restaurant, we start to recognize, man, I can actually start put money towards the things that could really help me versus just things that are convenient, right? Or just things that I love doing because either it tastes good, makes me look good, or something like that. Advanced saving and investing strategies. So I bring this up because real estate investing is a thing that when it comes to purchasing property, we don't just have to think about purchasing the properties that we're going to live in, but if we have by some means the income, the household income can allow us to purchase another property that can give us money in return. That is something that we can intentionally do to improve our financial well-being, which again can go towards some of the things that we're just talking about that will improve our wellness. Stock market investing. So same thing applies to stock market investing, putting money towards the market, whether we're talking about single stocks, or we're talking about ETFs, talking about mutual funds, whatever that is, we can intentionally put money towards those things and intentionally put money back into our pockets so that we can, again, possibly invest more into our health or continue just to invest and have more money to invest more and have more for our future. And the third thing, collective investing. So that's something that I've been looking more into and trying to find some ways that we can intentionally put money towards those things that will serve us, but do it collectively. Find a group of people, right? Create a group of people, right? There's so many different spaces that I'm recognizing that are out there where people are talking about purchasing a property, where people are talking about starting a business or putting money towards an LLC. I know one place we lived at on MacArthur, right by the lake. It was an apartment complex, but when we paid for our rent, we recognized we were paying an LLC. The guy that came in, he was a property manager, but he wasn't on the property all the time. And I'm like, who are these people who actually own this? It's probably a group of friends or a group of colleagues, whatever it may be, who collectively put their money together to have an LLC to purchase the apartment complex, and they are putting their money towards it collectively, and again, reaping from it collectively as well. I personally, at my church, started to have this conversation with some folks, and we found something called group investment clubs, in which people can, one, put their money towards investing, but it's still separate in the sense of you're not putting your money into a pot, you don't know where your money is. You're seeing how much you're investing, you're seeing how much what you invested is growing or decreasing, but it's a way for people to invest collectively. And ultimately, what we would need to do is like set up an LLC. At the end of the day, it's something that we can all continually manage and look at, and it'll be a great tool for learning about the stock market and learning about investing because it will allow us, or force us rather, to look at the stock market and learn more about it because we don't want to just put our money towards it and just walk away. And so these are things that we've seen. There are lending circles. You guys probably heard of that as well. Being able to help one another out, whether it's build credit or it's just helping someone to get the money to make a big purchase that they weren't able to make on their own. But all that to say is this is something that goes back into the history of a number of cultures around the world where people find ways to help each other out with money, and they do it as a group. And so we definitely want to consider those things, especially when it comes to investing, because we can see how that can benefit ourselves and those in our communities. Continual money conversations. And so part of the reason why I wanted to do this, not just today or at Kinfolx, but have conversations about money because I know that it's not easy, one, but then two, it's super beneficial when we actually have some time because it all has to be so secretive because there's a lot of shame or guilt around how much we do have or how much we don't have. Which is interesting because if we have too much, then we start feeling guilty that we have so much, so we don't want to talk about it. If we have too little, we feel so guilty because we should have more. That at the end of the day, people just don't end up talking about money. And unfortunately, it impacts us, as you can imagine, in a number of different ways. And so while families and communities must talk about money, we can talk about new opportunities. I just want to throw out AI and what's happening with that. Changing markets. I'll say AI again. We're recognizing some things that are happening in the stock market are directly impacted by AI. And then some companies are investing in it heavily. Some people are investing not so heavily. But at the end of the day, whether we're talking about Google or Meta or Amazon, we're talking about companies that have been around and will be around. And they are recognizing the various ways by which they can enhance their companies by implementing these different technologies. Collective wisdom, right? When more people are in the room, we can actually get some more thoughts and have some more information at our disposal. Accountability, as well as future planning. And then when it comes to examples, as weekly money meetings, I don't know if I could have a weekly money meeting with anybody, but I would love to, where we can talk about money on a regular basis. Group chats. I'm at least a part of 3 group chats where money is the focus. One is primarily on the stock market. Another is just kind of any and everything, whether it's retirement or it's credit. And then another is just one where we're just, again, in a space where we can talk about these things when we feel comfortable doing it. Monthly investment discussions, sharing good deals, whether we're talking about deals at the store or we're talking about the stock market or we're talking about, again, the real estate market. When something happens, I don't know if you guys ever drove through a neighborhood and go, this is a really nice neighborhood, but that house looks horrible. Somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who lives there. And they're probably, somebody's thinking, dude, I am waiting for this opportunity to get a house in this neighborhood, especially to rebuild because this is a great neighborhood to have a house in. But all that to say is sometimes these deals happen and you just have to know somebody who knows somebody that can give you that information in a timely fashion. And then celebrating financial wins together. I bring that up because, again, sometimes we may get a great credit score, we may pay off a house, pay off a car, and you never see that on Facebook. Like, no one is ever like, we paid off our house and this is how we're celebrating. It's just like, we paid it off and that's our business. Or paying off a car. It's a big deal because it could have been repoed at least 3 times and you managed to pay it off. Things worked out in your life to where it actually went okay. But it's something that we can actually celebrate so that we're encouraged to pay attention to these things. One thing I'll mention is when I go to different spaces, some people will come to me and say, Jermaine, I just wanted to say my credit score has risen by this much or this much because I started paying attention to what you were talking about. And I'm like, well, I didn't even know you were paying attention. They're like, I know, but I was. And so I started looking at what my credit score was and what my credit report was saying. And I worked on those things. And now my credit score is, again, closer to the 700s or closer to the 800s. And I'm just glad that people are feeling, one, inspired or encouraged, but then 2, just recognizing that if we can celebrate these things, people can start feeling a little bit more comfortable talking about it and going, hey, I just want to let you know, I'm up 50 points. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do when I get to 750 or to 800, but I'm just glad that I'm not in the 6s anymore, right? Or I'm just glad I'm not in the 5s. The power of community, wealth, and wellness. So these are just some examples, and what I will say, I do have some papers. One second. That I printed everything. And I'm glad I didn't make 40, but I did make some. These are just some community resources. There's the guy back here, I know in one of these spaces, create a space in which we actually do know a whole lot about practicing wellness and taking care of ourselves on a regular basis here in downtown Oakland. But there are numerous spaces, right? Whether we're talking about hiking spaces, I think about the 5 hikers, but I also think about the Men's Unity Hike and how that's something that's happening around not only in the Bay Area, but they're trying to take it to other parts like LA and Atlanta. Men's Wellness Fellowship, like connected with them at the Black Panther Museum down the street. And they have a monthly meeting, right, where we can talk about all of our feelings. And they have a women's group that started in Sacramento. They have a women's unity hike as well. But all that to say is there's all these different opportunities that are around us if we look for them, or if we create them. Right? We can genuinely create them ourselves and have some success. I created one at my church, a financial wellness group at my church, and where we're talking about it and having some conversations about investing, even though we know we don't know a whole lot, but just getting the conversation going so that we can start to build our knowledge. Financial accountability circles. I do something at the East Oakland Collective. It's actually a closed group, so I can't really be like, y'all should come. But it is happening at one of the local nonprofits, and that's something I'm trying to find other opportunities to do, is how can we actually get funding to talk about finances, whether it's with high school students or young adults or even older adults, because these are conversations that, again, are hard to have, and if we can have them more often, we can have more success with these types of things in the future. Let me see. Strong communities reduce stress and increase lifespan. Family systems help save money and support wellness, and being around other people who are building wealth and health creates upward momentum, and that's very real. If we can find community around reaching our financial goals, reaching for new financial goals, understanding new things about what we can do with our money, the more that it's possible and the more that we can feel supported on that journey. Action steps. Identify one wellness investment you'll make this month. Set a Blue Zone inspired goal on this particular paper. I definitely want to encourage folks, whether it's to exercise on a regular basis. I think about dollar cost averaging and how dollar cost averaging is all about investing a certain amount on a regular basis, whether the market is going up or the market is going down. And when it comes to dollar cost averaging, what you say is, I'm going to do this regularly regardless. And that can be applied to exercise or journaling, or again, yoga practices, or again, mindfulness, whatever that is. But it's saying, I'm going to do this regularly, regardless of the conditions that I'm facing that particular day. And so I definitely want to encourage people to have these regular practices that they can engage in, whether it's for their wellness or for their wealth. Again, increased monthly investments is an option by $25. But for some folks who may struggle with investing at all, just starting to invest. I mean, honestly, opening a brokerage account can feel like a whole feat because of all the steps you have to go through. But at the end of the day, it is something that we can do and put that effort towards. I also want to mention high yield savings accounts. I bring that up in the paper. Opening those and putting money in those on a regular basis. Having one money conversation within the next week, challenging ourselves to do that, or researching one real estate or investment opportunity. Acknowledging that there are numerous ways to invest money, right? I know that there are new apps now that allow you to invest in, well, we could talk about stuff like sports games, like that's some stuff that people are doing, of course. At the end of the day, there are a number of ways that we can invest money, again, whether we're talking about real estate, business, or stock. We can put our money towards something that will allow us to get more in return. We can talk about cards and coins and other collectibles and things. Thank you for being here. You're welcome. You're welcome. If you can leave, I have a sign-in sheet right here. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. It's all good. It's all good. But again, numerous opportunities out there if we just took the time to learn about those and intentionally engage them. But this is the closing part. So again, any questions, we can definitely get into those. But again, on the last page on the paper, there's links to Instagram and there's YouTube. Again, I'm going to be doing more videos and such on YouTube as well as social media. But again, connecting at the Way Christian Center in Berkeley, we connect there once a month, as well as having more conversations like this. So again, in the new year, the plans are to do cohorts or again, having one-off events where we focus on things like we're just going to talk about credit for a few hours in this meeting, talk about investing for a few hours in this meeting. Again, there are different styles of investing, different tools, different websites or apps that we can use. And so it's all about getting people familiar with things. But that also brings into the question around wellness too. So definitely want to have more conversations about hikes or walks or ways that we can, again, engage mindfulness together while, again, paying attention to our finances because, again, we don't want to just forget about the other thing when we are just focused on the one. But anyone have any questions before I close? Okay. So honestly, again, I don't know if anyone planned to be here, but thanks for being here, hearing me out, paying attention, because it is definitely a nerve-wracking day. And again, showing up, I'm like, I don't know who actually cares, but I know that these things are things that will not only help myself, but also help the folks that I'm around, and again, people in our community, because it's so, again, the information's out there, the access has increased with the internet, with Facebook and social media. There are so many people that are talking about financial literacy now that we can learn a lot if we just took the time to do it, but also if we took the risk, because sometimes it is scary, right? It is treacherous, or it is, nerve-wracking to say, I'm going to put my money towards something and see what happens. But at the end of the day, if we get more and more informed, we can find ways to know and have that confidence that the money is going to grow, whether it's this week or next year or in this decade, that the money isn't just going to be decreasing and losing value, but we can find ways to do it in an educated way. But yeah, I'll wrap up with that. Thanks for participating, for being here, and you guys have a good night. Thank you. That was scary. Okay. Cool beans. I need some more. Thank you so much. Let's see. I do not, honestly. Thank you. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Get up. Throw your hands in the sky. Queens in the back sipping yak. Yo, what's up? Oh my gosh. That is so funny. 'Cause it's scary. It is scary. The whole day I'm like, dude, like, what? Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You're like, you just be going, huh? You just... Hilarious.